My family tried to force me to give up my inheritance, but I outsmarted them all. Hey Reddit, I never expected to be posting here, but I'm hoping someone can give me clarity, or at least a place to process. Throwaway, for obvious reasons. So, for background, I, 32 years old, female, come from what outsiders would call an old money family. The kind with big holiday dinners, inherited furniture, and a last name you sometimes see in the newspaper. My parents divorced when I was young, and I grew up mostly with my mom, a quiet academic type, while my dad stayed in the family mansion with his new wife, Linda, and their 2 kids, my half-brother, Evan, 24 years old, male, and half-sister, Chloe, 20 years old, female. Our relationship was always polite, but distant. I was this sensitive one, more interested in books than brunches. When my grandmother passed away 6 months ago, she left a substantial inheritance to be divided equally between all 3 grandchildren, me, Evan, and Chloe. She was the only family member who genuinely listened, who encouraged my independence. Her will was clear, everything split 3 ways. That's when things started getting weird. The first week, I got half a dozen texts from my dad and Linda, all just checking in. Evan called me, something he never does, asking about my future plans. Chloe started sending me guilt trip memes about family loyalty and greed. At first, I thought they were just grieving in their own awkward ways. Then Linda invited me to family dinner. She poured me wine, complimented my hair, and asked, "Wouldn't you be happier with less responsibility?" She hinted at complicated taxes, lawyers, and how hard it is to manage money alone. I felt my gut twist with suspicion, but tried to brush it off. I didn't want to believe my own family would try to cut me out. But that was just the beginning. The next few weeks, things escalated. Subtle hints turned into outright pressure. My dad started calling late at night, always starting gentle, "How are you holding up?" but sliding into lectures about what grandma would have wanted. Linda sent me links to articles about people ruined by sudden wealth. Evan, usually too cool for family drama, texted out of nowhere, "You know, if you ever need help managing your share, I can take care of it for you." Then Chloe got dramatic. She called, sobbing about student loans, her dreams crushed if she doesn't get a bigger share. She implied I was selfish for even considering keeping what was left to me. I tried to set boundaries, told her I loved her, but Grandma's wishes were clear. She hung up on me. The worst was a lunch with my dad and the family lawyer, Mr. Stein. I arrived to find Linda already there, all smiles. The conversation started normal, then Mr. Stein slid a document across the table. "Just a simple amendment," he said. "Your siblings are younger, need more help, and you have a stable job. If you'd sign, it would redistribute a portion of your share." Dad chimed in, "It's just the right thing. We'll all still be family." My hands actually shook. I asked for time to think. Linda squeezed my arm, too tight. "Don't overcomplicate things, honey. We just want what's fair." I left the restaurant shaking, heart pounding, realizing it wasn't just guilt, it was a full-on scheme. And for the first time in my life, I started to get angry. After that lunch, everything changed. I started questioning myself. Maybe I was being greedy. Maybe it was easier just to sign and be done with it. Every text from family made my chest tighten. Then the rumors began. Chloe accidentally let it slip in a group chat with cousins that I was holding the family hostage over the inheritance. Evan told mutual friends I was planning to sell grandma's antiques on eBay for cash. I started getting cold shoulders at family gatherings, side eyes at brunches. Even my dad stopped calling me by my nickname. But I wasn't totally alone. My mom noticed I was distracted and finally pried the story out of me. She just hugged me and said, "Don't let anyone rewrite the truth. Your grandmother knew exactly what she was doing." That was the first time I felt real support in weeks. I confided in my childhood friend Sam, who's a paralegal. She didn't hesitate. "Don't sign anything. Keep every text, every email. Document everything. If they're willing to pull legal tricks, you need evidence." So I started screenshotting every conversation, saving every voicemail. I reached out to Mr. Stein directly, without my dad present, and asked for a copy of the will and all related documents. He seemed rattled but complied, and I found something odd. The amendment they wanted me to sign wasn't simple at all. It would have signed away almost everything, with no legal recourse. That night, I stared at the pile of evidence on my kitchen table, my anger finally sharpening into resolve. If my family wanted to play games, I'd learn the rules, and win. Fueled by a mix of anger and fear, I threw myself into research. I read up on estate law, inheritance cases, and every horror story Reddit had to offer. Sam helped me understand what all the legal jargon meant. The so-called amendment would have signed away not just my share, but any say I had in family property. No wonder Linda was all smiles. Evan started dropping by my apartment unannounced, acting like we were suddenly best friends. "You're not actually gonna fight over money, right?" he'd say, always with a fake laugh. Chloe kept sending emotional texts, mixing guilt, "I'm drowning in debt," with venom, "Can't believe you're doing this to us." My dad left increasingly desperate voicemails. "Just do the right thing for the family." Every day, I felt more isolated, but also more certain I was being played. My mom told me stories about how Grandma always stood up for herself, even when the family didn't approve. "She'd want you to be strong," Mom said. That became my mantra. I called a new lawyer, one who didn't know my dad or Linda, and gave her everything: texts, documents, the will. She was blunt. "This is textbook manipulation. Don't sign a thing, and don't go to any more meetings alone." She suggested we send a formal notice to the family lawyer demanding full transparency about the estate, with a clear warning about undue pressure. The next day, I got an invite to another family dinner. The message: "Let's talk this out, just us, no lawyers." I took a deep breath, knowing this was my moment to turn the tables. That dinner was nothing like the warm family gatherings I remembered as a kid. Linda met me at the door with a too bright smile. Evan avoided my eyes, and Chloe pouted at the far end of the table. My dad opened a bottle of wine, my grandmother's favorite, I realized with a pang, and made a toast to family unity. I nearly laughed. We started eating, but no one talked about anything real. Just as dessert arrived, Linda launched in. "We all know things have been tense. It would be so much better for everyone if you just signed the document, sweetheart. Let's keep things simple." Chloe wiped fake tears, muttering about her tuition. Evan leaned forward. "Look, it's not personal, but we really need this. You're the oldest. You're supposed to set an example." I looked at each of them, steady for the first time in weeks. "I've read the amendment. It would give up my inheritance entirely." "Why would I do that?" I said it calmly, watching shock flicker across Linda's face. Dad tried to save face. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under. We need this money. And you thought you could just guilt or trick me into giving it up?" I replied, voice even. "I've seen the will, and I've spoken to my own lawyer. Grandma was clear. If you push this any further, I'm prepared to take it to court." For the first time, no one had anything to say. The only sound was the clink of Linda's fork on her plate. I stood up. "I loved Grandma. I'm not going to let you rewrite her wishes, or mine." Then I walked out, heart pounding, but for the first time, sure I was doing the right thing. The aftermath was instant. The next morning, I woke up to a barrage of messages, angry, pleading, even threatening. Linda accused me of tearing the family apart. Chloe posted a cryptic story on Instagram about greed poisoning blood. Evan left a voicemail full of cursing, blaming me for ruining his life. My dad sent a single text: "I hope you're happy." But something had shifted. Instead of breaking me, their desperation just confirmed everything I'd feared. I forwarded every message to my lawyer. She advised me to keep my distance and document everything. She also suggested we send a letter to Mr. Stein, the family lawyer, formally asserting my rights under the will and warning that further harassment would be met with legal action. Then, my lawyer found something huge. Linda and my dad had been trying to move some family assets into a private trust, one that would have excluded me if I'd signed the amendment. It was textbook underhanded, but illegal given the terms of Grandma's will. My lawyer drafted a powerful letter demanding a full accounting of the estate and threatening to take them to probate court for breach of fiduciary duty. The response was swift. Mr. Stein, who had clearly hoped I'd just fold, suddenly became very cooperative. He confirmed my full share would be protected. He highly recommended the family stop all pressure immediately. My dad tried one last guilt trip call, but I hung up after saying this was never about family. It was about control. That night, I finally slept. For the first time in months, I felt proud of myself, not just for holding on to the inheritance, but for finally standing up for what I deserved. The fallout was brutal and awkward, just like I expected. Linda stopped pretending. She went from sugary sweet to ice cold, ignoring my calls about anything but legal logistics. Chloe blocked me on every platform and told mutual friends I'd destroyed the family's trust. Evan sent a single text. Congrats, hope it was worth it. I let it go unread. Dad, to his credit, tried to reach out once more, but it was all about himself. How hard it was for him. How disappointed he was that I couldn't compromise. There was never an apology, never an ounce of real accountability. But there were also quiet messages of support. My mom took me out for coffee and said she was proud. A couple of cousins reached out, admitting they always admired Grandma's fairness, and even apologized for believing the rumors. Sam, my friend and legal wingwoman, showed up at my door with champagne and a ridiculous Boss Babe mug. I had to accept that some relationships were beyond saving. Holidays would be quieter, some doors now permanently closed. It hurt. Losing people, even toxic ones, leaves scars. But the relief of no longer living under their manipulations felt like taking a deep breath after years underwater. For the first time, I started thinking about my own future, not out of guilt or obligation, but real possibility. I set up a small scholarship in Grandma's name, donated some to causes she cared about, and started planning for myself, with no strings attached. The inheritance was never about the money. It was about claiming my right to boundaries, respect, and self-worth. The weeks that followed felt oddly quiet. I blocked Linda and Chloe, muted Evan, and let my dad's messages sit unread. There was grief for the family I wished I had, but also space to breathe, to think, to finally be myself without their expectations weighing me down. I reconnected with old friends, threw myself into my work, and took my mom on a weekend trip in honor of Grandma. At night, I'd sit with a cup of tea and read her old letters, finding strength in her words. Stand up for yourself. You're worth it. For once, I believed it. Legally, the estate wrapped up cleanly. Mr. Stein, suddenly all business, confirmed my share was secured and transferred. My lawyer, who'd become something of a mentor, helped me set up a trust and guided me on responsible investing. No drama, just clarity. It felt like reclaiming power I didn't know I had. Of course, there was still gossip. An aunt tried to rope me into the family narrative at a cousin's birthday, hinting I'd caused unnecessary trouble. I just smiled, said, I followed Grandma's wishes, and moved on. No more explanations, no more justifying myself to people who'd never truly listened. The best part? My self-doubt faded. I saw that loving someone doesn't mean letting them walk over you. Family is supposed to be a source of love, not a weapon of control. I built new boundaries. And for the first time, my life felt like my own. As spring turned into summer, I realized I was healing, not just from the inheritance drama, but from years of putting my family's comfort above my own. I started therapy, not just for advice, but to unpack all the guilt and people-pleasing I'd carried since childhood. It wasn't easy. There were days I missed the old routines, even the dysfunctional ones. But each day, I felt lighter. I spent more time with people who actually made me feel good. My mom, Sam, a couple of childhood friends who'd stood by me. We started a tradition of family dinners that were filled with laughter, not obligation. My world felt smaller, but safer, more genuine. Work flourished. I had the financial freedom to take a risk on a creative side project, something Grandma always encouraged. I traveled for the first time in years, seeing places she loved and scattering wildflower seeds in her honor. Sometimes, late at night, I'd see an old family photo or a post from Chloe and feel a pang. But I didn't reach out. I knew now that setting boundaries meant accepting some losses, and that was okay. The inheritance didn't fix everything, but it gave me a second chance to build a life based on honesty, dignity, and the quiet kind of happiness that no one can take away. For anyone out there dealing with family manipulation or betrayal, you are not alone, and you are not wrong for protecting yourself. Healing is slow, but it's worth every step. Looking back, I sometimes wish things had been different, that my family had valued love over money, that we could have honored Grandma's wishes without all the games and heartache. But the truth is, standing up for myself was the hardest and best thing I've ever done. I lost some relationships, but I gained something more important: self-respect and peace. If you're reading this because you're tangled in a similar mess, please hear me. Your boundaries matter. You don't owe anyone your silence, your happiness, or your inheritance just because they share your blood. Manipulation is not love, and guilt is not loyalty. Get your own lawyer, keep records, and trust your gut. Don't let anyone rush or pressure you. Stand tall, even when your voice shakes. Find your real people, the ones who see you, not just your last name or your bank account. Hold on to your dignity, even if it means letting go of family traditions or relationships that no longer serve you. Life is too short to spend it fighting for a seat at a table that was never meant for you. Build your own table. Find your peace. Honor the people who truly loved you, like I try to honor my grandma every day. Thank you, Reddit, for letting me share this story. If it helps even one person find the courage to stand up for themselves, then every sleepless night was worth it. Stay strong, trust yourself, and never let anyone tell you what you're worth.